Okay, guys, we're among the stones today with Mike Rogowski. So tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Mike Rogowski. So my Instagram is Home Gym Hero, and I also have another Instagram for my Etsy store at Magnanimous Metals. That's for the art that I make with steel scrolling. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that too later. But yeah, so my background is kind of old time strongman stuff, grip sport, steel bending. I like to do a lot of the old time, like an all around weightlifting type stuff. Anything really that has to do with strength, I probably am interested in dipping my toes in it at some point or to some degree. Um, but yeah, beyond that, I know a lot about kind of the science of this stuff. I have a master's in exercise physiology. I have a PhD in nutritional science. Um, it doesn't really factor too much into the specific training I do, but I could probably tell you a lot about what goes on with that stuff. But yeah, so that's my. Oh, and I should say too, I compete at the 83 kilogram weight class for grip sport and steel bending, and 80 kilogram weight class for arm lifting USA. So my walking around weight somewhere around 81 kilograms, but I cut down uh, for contests or stuff. So that's kind of my thing is that I'm pretty good for that weight class. I don't have any, not big enough for the total world records, but I do pretty well for my where I'm at.
Awesome. Yeah. We heard you won King Kong at 80 kilos.
Yeah. So that was 2020, and that was surprising actually because the years before I don't think I was above sixth place in that, and that kind of became my goal. It had been for a while, but like that was what I was really reaching for the year before was to eventually win King Kong in my weight class, and I thought that I could do that. Um, and then the next year it happened. So that was like a lifelong goal that already capped off. And I should say too, that really was just a confluence of things that came together that had a new event, the grab ball, that really favored me. I have really strong fingertip strength. So a lot of people were struggling to figure that out. I took to it like a duck in water, and I really honed in on my attempts. I didn't, in total, as far as like from attempts that I picked versus attempts that I missed, I didn't even give up 2 kilograms over the course of the 4 lifts. So I picked my attempts well, and I think some competitors that maybe could have beaten me didn't pick their attempts as well. That the other thing I should say too is I'm kind of a generalist, so I don't fall too far on certain events. And when you have reverse strongman scoring, you really get punished for events that you bomb compared to the rest of the
Yeah.
field. There's really no way to come back to and still get first place if you dip below fourth place in any one event based on that type of scoring, I would say.
Yeah, I love the grab ball myself, so it's a good event.
I like there's something about those tip tester style events that I just like. You can really hurt yourself on them too, so you can't go too hard. That's what I would tell people starting out. Don't just max out on those things.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how you do on the potato because it's definitely a tip tester type implement for sure.
Yeah, and that's what I thought was interesting about it too. And I saw like you kind of have like the washers sticking out. I was like, okay, yeah. So somebody with like really big mitts, like they're not gonna try to completely like wrist wrap that thing or something.
Exactly. Yeah, so definitely it's like a pinch on the thumb. It's like a thumb smash and then a fingertip lift.
Yeah,
So
well, that's
it's
what got me interested in it as an implement because like it's just fat enough that you have to really engage your thumb. You're limited because you have to, use your tips, but it's kind of wide enough that you really get that kind of fat bar kind of feel though
mhm.
too. So I just thought it was just an interesting idea. So
It's
I need
definitely a fun one.
Yeah, it's pretty humbling. A lot of people thought they would do quite a bit more than they wound up doing. So it'll be Yeah, it'll be neat to see what you pull on that sucker for sure. So what got you into doing grip sport and grip training and all of steel bending?
Well, I would say like it first started off as like strongman stuff. You know, you
Hmm.
see on ESPN, old school strongman, world's strongest man, and
Oh yeah,
just
for
seeing
sure.
that
We grew
like
up watching that.
Over
yeah,
Christmas.
the old stuff was cool, and seeing like the you seen like the steel bars they bend, like some of the old stuff was just dangerous.
Yeah.
Looking back, you know, it looked cool at the time, but when they were doing the rebar and stuff like that, or maybe it was, I forget what the specific steel was. It looked like rebar, but they, knowing what I know now as a steel bender, and just what they were doing, or actually the rules that they had in place, having them do, and talking with other strongmen, where sometimes they've seen that event come back. It's very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, and that's not that kind of specialty for those types of athletes. So it's just not a good fit. But I did feel really good when I realized one day that I'm bending bars that are what they were trying to bend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I'd say, the first thing that got me into just that title, the world's strongest man, and I thought like, oh yeah, that's I could do that. I didn't grow up to be world's strongest man stock. I'd say that I'm about 5'5", uh, not even like 180 pounds. So uh, didn't quite work out like I thought it would. But I always, part of that was is that I knew growing up from just my friends, my peers, whatever. I knew I was significantly stronger than just the average person. So that was just something that I thought I had a natural affinity for, and I wanted to bring that out. I wanted to show that. The other kind of part of that is that we talk about like the Popeye gene in my family. Like my brother, my father, his uncles, my cousins, the men anyway on the family. Like we have just naturally have really big forearms. So that grip strength, I feel like I have kind of a genetic advantage. So I feel like it's just a strength to play to. And the other thing I'd say, the other phase of that was when I finally got a hold of the Iron Mind stuff, the grippers that they
Yeah.
had, the steel bending certifications. That just made me realize like, oh, there's like a list like you can get on, you can get recognized for this stuff. That just kind of lit a fire under me, and just it opened up the world of grip to all the different types of implements, all the different ways you train it, all the different things it meant to have hand strength, and just kind of, getting into having a really solid background in weightlifting and knowing, more about the old time strongman stuff. Just that hand strength was so foundational. It's really like
Right.
a good set of tires, like the engine. You can only do so much with a good engine if your tires don't have any tread. That's the analogy I like to say. And so just how powerful you felt with that extra grip, you were able to fully utilize your strength. And I remember like I did wrestling and football. I wasn't that good at those, but in wrestling, like I was definitely the strongest wrestler, and I could just grab hold of people and they couldn't get free. So stuff like that. So it felt really rewarding, but there was just something about it. I felt like that I had a natural affinity for it, so it just made me want to go even harder to it. And with the steel bending, the bending a red nail became like my primary strength goal for like a long time since like I heard about it. And it took me a long time to get there, but that kind of opened my eyes to steel bending. I would do strongman shows, kind of like the old time strongman performance stuff. So I got exposed to doing steel bending for shows, and then I got really into it with the competitive steel bending only a couple of years ago when David Horn and his World of Grip started hosting these online steel bending competitions for brace bending. And I knew what I was doing. I'd done that stuff before, but honing that technique and taking it to another level and finding out that I could keep up with, I'm not the number one overall, but for my weight class, I usually am. In steel bending, getting that feedback that like, hey, I can crack into the top 10 in some of these events, regardless of weight class. I'm better at this than I thought. I just thought I was, kind of strong and knew what I was doing. I didn't realize I was this good at it, and it just made me want to do more.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Awesome. So what do you consider your greatest athletic achievement?
As far as the greatest athletic achievement is probably for contest wise, probably winning King Kong for my weight class. Like I said, I feel like that's kind of like an achievement of a lifetime. My goal is to podium again, to at least get in the top three. I think that would be good. I don't, the competition just keeps getting tougher, and I would say too, like a lot of people are really good at the rolling handle lifts, and that's not. I'm okay at that, but like some people just blow me out of the water with that. So it's like I said, it's hard to maintain that top four position when people keep getting so much
Right.
better at that stuff. But I'd like to podium again. As far as if I was to pick out one single thing to greatest accomplishment, probably bending a Goliath bar. I spent a lot of time working on that. And for those that don't know, a Goliath bar is the inch and a half wide, half inch, thick steel flat bar that's 48 inches long. I'm definitely one of the lightest people to have done that. Not the lightest, because I know, like, so there's some performing strongmen like Dennis Rogers or oh, what's his name? I'm drawing a blank on him now. Crap. It was in the documentary Bending Steel. I've met the guy in person. I'm drawing a blank. I'm sorry. But yeah, some people have bent those types of bars, but not too many that were in my weight class, I would say. I'm trying to think if there's. It's kind of hard. There's always that next thing. I would say, oh, the other major one. I would say, people ask me like, what's my most impressive lift, and this does kind of overlap in the grip strength, is deadlift, one arm deadlifting 450 pounds. No
That's
hook.
crazy.
No hook. Wow, that's incredible.
That's crazy.
Man.
Yeah, and that was a handle though. So that was a handle lift, not a barbell. I should clarify that. So that's a different dimension, but still, it is the full weight. I pulled my minor pec in my right side doing that, mind you. So it was rough. I haven't touched that lift that heavy since then. I think eventually maybe I could do 500 pounds if I really try, but once you start getting up that high, things obviously start to fall apart.
Yeah, that's incredible. Especially your body weight. That's just crazy for
I
a
said,
one-handed lift.
favorite lifts too, though, because it really engages everything in the asymmetry of it. You're working muscles that you wouldn't normally work.
Yeah.
You just have to be careful about it, and you just have to be mindful of how, if you're trying to do both sides, you're doing a lot more volume than you think, because the other side's engaged too when you're doing
Yeah.
it, right? It's just not quite the same. Like, you're still pulling with your entire body. So if you do, uh, one set and then another, it's not like you work like your right press and your left press. Like, you've done two
Yeah.
sets now when you do right and left with one arm. So you got to be mindful of how much volume you're actually doing with that lift, and how, when you actually do go heavy. And I would say too, like, when you get that heavy, you start tearing skin, like the mechanical properties of your just basic stuff start falling apart at that kind of friction.
Yeah, definitely.
That's crazy weight, man. I've never dealt with that, so I don't understand the mechanics of tearing my skin open yet. My grip hasn't quite gotten that strong. I've torn the webbing a couple times and had some grippers mess with me pretty good, because I'm messing with like number 3s and whatnot now, and those can like start to give you a little bit of issue, but nothing like that.
Yeah.
How long have you been training grip?
I would say there's a couple of phases of training, I would say, in my lifetime that you could count as the start. We had like one of those like really small aerobic weight sets when I was little growing up. And I think I started messing around with it's one that goes from like 8, 5, and 3. I started messing around with that. I think as early as like 8 years old. Never went too heavy, didn't really know what I was doing, just kind of mimicked basic lifts that I got. Then I got my first real weight set when I was 12 years old, and that went up to about 110 pounds, and worked that pretty well. And I outgrew that in like a year in terms of like the lower body lifts. That was became too easy. So as far as like regular weight training, I started that when I was like 12. Then I started actually doing sports around then, and those usually had some kind of strength training component too. Um, which is why when I got to like 16 years old, eventually I had an injury that I couldn't continue the wrestling season with, but I could still do some other stuff. And that just made me realize, I've always been better at the weightlifting. I was always like, a stud in the weight room. Everyone else wasn't doing that, when we had football practice and the conditioning stuff. I was really good at the weights. I could barely handle a ball, and I was so small that I wasn't really good at tackling people like I should have been. So I decided, like, you know what, I'm done with this stuff. I'm done with football. I had got too many concussions from that. I'm done with wrestling because I wasn't that great at it anyway, and can't do the rest of the season. So I said, oh, I wonder if there's like I could do strongman stuff. And so when I got into like competing in team division stuff for strongman training. So I would say 16 years old is when I actually started to train kind of heavy, purposefully trying to do those kind of more power movements and stuff. And and my training was kind of like a mix, I would say, of doing like the old time stuff and what would be considered modern strongman. And I would say too, like I probably got off to a stunted start because like I liked to read a lot when I was a kid, and all the materials that were out there at the time were really just for bodybuilding. And I didn't realize at the time that bodybuilders were considered the weakest of all strength athletes. And once I found that out, I was like, okay, I don't want to do bodybuilding stuff anymore. I want to go more into strongman stuff. And I didn't realize though either, because like, you'd read like Muscle and Fitness magazine, or Flex was the big one. I would look at these workouts and I'd think like, oh, I got to be doing like 6 sets of squats, and then I'm going to do 6 sets of leg presses, and then like another 6 sets of leg. It's like those guys are all on steroids. You're not going to get shit doing that, So what I learned from that is that whatever I would improve at whatever exercise I did first, and then after that I'd just be too tired and would do worse after that. So I kind of, from that trial and error, I learned what worked for me, and what works for me is pretty low volume compared to a lot of other people. I just pick a basic movement that I do. I hit that, and then I'll probably do some kind of like antagonist work, some like push pull kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or if it's like a lower total body lift, maybe I'll do some ab accessory stuff afterwards. And then I'm always doing something with grip. Maybe it's I'll do like if it's a big grip movement, maybe I can do some like narrow pinch that doesn't tax much else. But usually I'm just rotating through grip movements every single workout. And even if I'm too tired to do a big lift, there's probably some other grip movement that I can do. So it's usually a big compound lift, accessory lift. Maybe it's like it's an antagonist, like push pull kind of thing. So maybe there might be 2 main lifts, and then it's grip work. So that's my workout. It's usually only like 3 to 5 exercises. I usually do sets of 5. If I'm trying to get closer to a contest, I like doing sets of 3. And then if I'm, the week before a contest or something like that, I'm probably doing sets of 2 or sets of 1. And that's it. Like I can get up pretty heavy with that, and I don't need to do a ton of volume. I would say there's a point where volume, I think, works when you're first starting out in your phase. But for me, there comes a point where you're just making yourself tired. And you're not supposed to just make yourself tired for the sake of it. You're supposed to be getting stronger. And those aren't the same thing to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good stuff.
And do you do that like every day, or how many days a week do you work your grip or do your workout in general?
I would say probably in terms of workout, it's probably like 5 to 6 days a week. And a grip, it's probably close to like 6 to 7. Just because like there's so many different movements with grip, and even within like regular weight training, I just work around what's not tired. I'm very much if I'm sore, like let sleeping dogs lie, you just recover back. The other thing I should say too is when you're training heavy, you need more rest. You're doing less volume, you're getting less sore, but you need more time to recover. It's very
Yep.
counterintuitive. So a lot of these, when you're first starting out, you do 3 sets of 10, you're sore the next day, and then the day after that, you're ready to go again. But I found like when you train really heavy, like especially when you start to get even heavier than say sets of 5, you really need 72 hours of recovery, not 48.
Yeah, that second day is the worst
Yeah.
Yeah.
when you're doing
Yeah.
heavy. It's like I'm more sore the second day than the first.
It's really strange like that. Like if I found like if you do super high volume, like you're talking like sets of 20 plus, you'll be sore like an hour later.
Yeah.
You do like sets of like 10 or something, you're sore the next day. You do sets of 3, you're sore 2 days later.
Exactly.
It's pretty much like that. It was individual experience may vary, but I found that to be very true. But yeah, so for me, I kind of work around what's not tired, and I try to be mindful of that, because I found that's when if you don't pay attention to that, that's when you start breaking down. That's when you start getting injuries. You yourself may not have pain, but when that muscle's fatigued, or when you have that CNS fatigue, um, you it starts to bring out the worst in those kind of things. And I think that's when you tend to get the most injuries, whether it's your tendons aren't recovered, or something that you do was fine, but then you push on it again and now it's irritated. I actually have been experienced that a little bit with metatarsals in my hand. I kind of boogered them up with some really short steel bends about a month ago. And then I started doing some other movements recently with the fence post. I don't know if you've seen that, but the vertical bar lift that's square. And so it kind of overextends your hand a little bit to get that tight grip. And then the next day, like my metatarsals like really hurt. I was like, oh, it wasn't necessarily because of that. It was because of what I did before in combination with that. So those things keep cropping up, or I'd say creeping up on you. The more and more you just keep training stuff, you should probably rest.
Yeah, I know after a big competition too, you talk about CNS soreness, man, after you get fired up and you're in competition and you get, 2 or 3 PRs, I'm just wiped the next day completely.
Yeah, and I've noticed the last grip contest I was at, my hands hurt. Like it was worse than I'd seen. It wasn't like I felt like I injured myself, but it was like definitely take a rest. And you think of it yourself like, oh, it's just grip. Like I mean, the rest of your body should be fine, but no, I was wiped. My bicep was sore later on from all the heavy pulling on it and all that. So definitely for sure, just any sort of competition, even just that amp up that you have to do to get your headspace.
Felt like I needed to eat a bunch of spinach so my forearm would feel better.
Can help. I mean, it's a good source of iron, calcium.
That's awesome.
So what do you think is your greatest blunder, blooper, or injury?
As far as like, I would say I'm pretty good at not injuring myself because of like what I said. Like I try to give myself enough time to recover. If something's not happening, I just, I leave it alone. I think some people get there's this expression of like you can only ever do that next rep once, and then it's gone. You've missed that opportunity. It's like, well, okay, I guess, but there's no sense crying over spilled milk. Like if it's gonna hurt you, it's not worth it. So there's a time and a place to really push it, and I think that's when you're like, you're performing in front of people, not to embarrass yourself. Plus, you're supposed to entertain them. When it's in competition, that's the time to suck it up, to really turn it on. But if it's just not happening, it's just not happening. Uh, don't try to force it, and just think. I would say if something's not clicking for a workout, just pivot and think of some other way you can make progress. Maybe you can't PR on the max lift that you can do, but maybe you can hold it for longer at this weight or something that's not going to tear up your hand. Or like, this comes up a lot in steel bending, where it's just like, yeah, I could push it to the limit, but like I gotta make sure my hand's healed, or I'm gonna push myself back even further. That can happen with pinch training too. I think it's tempting to have when you have an unsatisfactory workout with pinch training, or there was a PR you were hoping to hit, and then you didn't, to start like really hitting negatives really heavy. Don't do that. You're gonna rip your webbing off really quick. So you gotta know when to hold back, and that comes with experience. And I know some people that are from like the ultra intense crowd that are like really into the psychology of things, and they might not like that. That might not fit with their style. But it's not that I can't do that. It's just that I know that doing that all the time doesn't work for me. It just sidelines you longer. But to get to your question, I would say probably the one that I remember most vividly was I was bending a horseshoe. I think I was trying to turn it into a specialty bend. So I bend them into weird shapes, like things that look like snakes, or like reverse coils, or like obviously like ribbons or something like that. And it flew out of my hand. Something about like flew out of my hand, and it was only from like here to here, but the tip of it, the tip of the horseshoe flew out of my hand at such speed that I hit the tip of my index finger, and it drew blood. So for reference, like the tip of that horseshoe was every bit as thick and blunt as my index finger is now. And that was enough to actually cut my skin with how fast that thing was flying at my finger. So that tells you how much of a blooper that was.
Wow, yeah. The pressure and bending is nuts. I've socked myself in the face once or
I've done
twice
that.
doing that.
I
Yeah.
always, whatever I'm gripping, just any lifting in general that's above like a really mild intensity, I have a mouth guard in for sure. Just
Yeah.
because, and it's not that I grit my teeth, it's just I want to avoid anything remotely like that could happen. And yeah, the pressures in bending are just tremendous. And that's what I thought illustrated it very well. Is you're talking about really, it's like throwing something half a foot, and that was still enough force that a blunt object could cut my finger.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hit yourself hard enough where you have to stop for a second.
Now that you do get the head rush, I would say, with failed attempts at steel bending. That's for
Yeah.
sure. That's why I would say, there comes a time like when you get that, it's worth trying again, maybe, but don't keep trying after
Yeah.
you start seeing stars there.
Yeah, maybe try again another day.
Don't
Yeah,
strap yourself to a bench so when you pass out, you just don't fall.
Yes, exactly.
yeah,
Yes,
and
that
I've
was
been pretty
a
lucky.
Ben Edwards.
Yeah, Ben Edwards exclusive.
Yeah, right there. That's how he learned how to put the pressure to the max and bending.
Strap himself to the bench or to a tool bench or something, and he'd bend over it so when he passed out, I'd catch him.
I'm pretty lucky with that. I haven't had too much of an issue with that. There have been, I would say, a few deadlifting attempts where I could see the peripheral, closing in, but
Yeah.
I never actually passed out. So I feel fairly resilient against that compared to some other people.
So other than podium and in King Kong again, do you have any other major athletic goals that you're shooting for right now?
Well, yeah. So I'd say the main thing I think that's left to check the box is double body weight, double overhand axle deadlift. So I've been pretty close to that. Haven't I would say I've hit a weight that I would be double body weight at my current weight that I wasn't double body weight, if that makes sense. So if I just need to hit it while I'm lean enough, and so that'll come. I recently double overhand deadlifted 500 pounds on a regular bar, and so I
Nice.
think with a little bit of more training, it's probably going to take a couple more years because this took me a while, but I could probably get triple body weight on that. Um, Another lifelong goal I've kind of wanted to do that I was really close is a 600-pound deadlift. No belt or anything. I've done 585. So I was getting there. I was hoping to do 600 when I did that, but I was like, well, didn't happen. So
Do you
whatever.
do straps or just mixed grip when you're deadlifting that high?
Just mixed grip. I've never needed to use straps with regular deadlifting. I mean, with partials, yeah, but um, I, to be honest, like I never understood. Just because, like I said, I have a natural affinity for it. I never understood why anyone would need straps if you were allowed to do mixed grip. Like it didn't make sense to me. Like I'm not getting taxed by doing mixed grip on these heavy lifts. I would say what I actually do when I'm deadlifting is to help cheat. I lift conventional. I've never liked the leverages with sumo, but for me, like I kind of monkey grip the bar. Not completely, my thumbs are involved, but when I mix grip, I actually kind of set it deeper here. So, like this would be completely enclosed. I kind of grip it like this because my grip is strong enough to just hold on to the bar mixed, and I'm shaving that like last half inch off that I don't have to lift it up. So I have
Yeah.
so much grip strength to spare that I can afford to shave off height on that. So, the solution to that is just do double overhand until you can't anymore. And
Yeah.
then, make sure you're training both sides. Uh, and another thing I think can help too is if you do double underhand deadlifts,
Mhm.
that's going to train your bicep tendon to handle those heavy loads.
That's a
Uh,
good idea.
Yeah, I've heard that.
and it's really mechanically it's very advantageous. You'd be surprised how easy it feels before your grip gives out. It's pretty interesting. I learned that from reading about what Bob Peoples did with his deadlifting training, and from what I understand, what he would do to help train at his very high level is he would do negatives. He had some kind of hydraulic apparatus that let him start at the top, and then he would slowly lower it down. I think he took a fairly long time to lower it, and he emphasized that you have to do it in the same pattern that your positive concentric deadlift would
Yeah.
be. A lot of
Right.
people when they set the bar down, they just kind of ragdoll it back down. Don't do that in your training. Try to set it down like you're actually lifting the bar. It's the reverse of that, not just some flop. So that's how he would work up to. He found that when he could do 4 controlled negatives, he was ready to lift that weight one time concentrically. And he also kind of theorized that if you were able to hold on to it, that underhand grip would be better because that lets you keep the bar closer to your body. And I think he's right based
Oh,
on
that
trying
makes
to do
sense.
that pretty heavy, but your grip just can't hold on to it. So if you could hook yourself double underhand, maybe
Yeah.
that would be the way to go in theory. I don't know. That sounds terrible, but the point stands that you can help strengthen your bicep with that. And I found when I was deadlifting, by switching hands each side, I would do odd number sets, like 5 sets of 5 or so. So I ended up actually, the heaviest set would be on the grip that I was less natural to me, like this way.
Mm.
And so it conditioned that side to the point where now they don't really feel different to me. Like I can actually forget which side I did because they feel so even to me. So just make sure you're alternating your mixed grip when you do
Yeah, you get a lot of guys that never alter their that, and then like one hip's off, and they're all weird.
that.
Like
Yeah,
one's always back, and their shoulders messed up on that side because they never switched their mixed grip.
yeah, and just in general, you want to throw in some one arm lifting. Like I really like one arm snatches. That was a recent milestone for me. Not snatches, swings. I did a one arm dumbbell swing with 135. I'm hoping to eventually lifelong goal with that's like 150. That would be pretty cool. But that's a hard lift. But at the same time, like it's a lot less uh, technical mastery involved in say like a one arm snatch.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's
Still.
definitely that's a low entry point to doing the one arm lifts. It's not going to rip the skin off your hand, but it's like a one arm deadlift. But it will fly out of your hand if you don't have good hand strength. So
Yep.
it's a good functional grip strength thing too. It definitely can be limited by your grip if you don't have a good grip.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some lifestyle habits you subscribe to that may benefit the average person trying to get healthy and fit?
Okay, lifestyle stuff. Well, I would say a big thing that I don't always do, I'll get off the bat, it's the kind of low hanging fruit, is make sure you get enough sleep. The main, governing bodies, that I should not governing bodies, but the research bodies, societies, scientific associations that study sleep, their general recommendation is for you to get at least 7 hours. So make sure you do that. If you actually are getting enough sleep, you tend to spontaneously lose weight anyway and get leaner. And that has to do with it messes with your energy homeostasis. You actually crave sweet foods when you're sleep deprived. So make sure you get enough sleep. A lot of people say, "Oh yeah, that's good advice." It's like, well, then why aren't you doing it? Like, just make the extra time. There's all sorts of things you can do for sleep hygiene. I would say, a couple of things that help with that. Melatonin at night. People say like, "Oh, I don't want to get addicted." It's not addicting. Data doesn't show that. Magnesium supplement at night seems to help a lot of people. Something that I think helps quite a bit is glycine supplements.
Yeah.
3 grams of glycine at night. It functions as an inhibitory neurotransmitter in your body. So taking that before night. And something that I try to do too is I wear blue light filtering glasses once it gets dark when I'm on the computer. There's so much light during the day that doesn't really matter, but at night
Yeah.
it can help you just because you are experiencing light when you should be getting more biofeedback from how dark it is outside. So that's something that you can do to help with that. So I think sleep's important. For diet, for me, I would say I don't describe to a low carb diet. I'm not really big into fad diets, but I will say an easy way to kind of cut out unnecessary calories is starch in foods. That's easy
Yep.
for me because starches tend to taste kind of bland to me, so I don't like crave them. But most, I would say, a lot of people talk about like hidden sugars or sugar sweetened stuff. I would say the thing that sneaks into people's diet the most is starch. Actually, there's a certain
Absolutely.
idea people have that a meal isn't complete unless it has a meat, a starch, and a vegetable. But they don't like to eat the vegetable, so they skip on that, and then they eat a bunch of starch instead. Or they think that the starch that they have counts as their vegetable. It doesn't. Stop doing that.
Sweet potato is not a vegetable.
And that's the interesting thing with that is that you can take something like a sweet potato that has a lot of sugar and stuff when you cook it. But if you were to take that same thing and eat it raw, now you have a lot of more resistant starch in there. So certain foods, I would say, can be worth cooked. Most of the time, it's not a big deal either way. Other thing along with that, if you're talking about food choices, more cruciferous vegetables, so things like broccoli would be good. Leafy greens. I would say that. Something that I like too, I think from a supplement standpoint, it's very underrated is vitamin K2. You don't really get that in a lot of foods except for fermented foods, but that's actually really important for bone health. And if you're training heavy, you're putting stress on your bones. You want those bones to get stronger, so that's a good one. It's
So
also
drink wine. No, I'm just kidding.
Yep.
So just drink some wine. No.
yeah, you can, I mean that's the other interesting thing. So this is putting on my nutrition scientist hat. Data consistently shows that moderate alcohol consumption is associated with better
Glass of
health
wine a day is pretty good
than
for you.
complete abstinence anyway. That has to do with a couple of things. Like as far as like with beer, you get silicone from that. So dietary silicone is actually helpful for bones, the non-mineral component of bones. It's a good nutrient for that. Wine has resveratrol. Things like whiskey and aged spirits have L-tannins in them. So there are some benefits. You just don't. If you're a guy, just try not to make a habit of drinking more than 3 a night. And if you're a woman, like probably 1.5, 1 or something. It's not to say you can't ever have more than that, but just your total weekly quantity shouldn't be like an average of 6. We'll just say that. But so some other healthy habits, I would say, I would say don't be afraid to try intermittent fasting. I think that's
Yeah.
something that can be helpful. So some people like to do on days and off days. What I just try to do is extend the fast period from last time I have dinner to when I eventually have breakfast. So a lot of the benefits that they realize now that came from these animal studies that involve like severe calorie restriction, it was more having to do with the fact that they were fasting these animals for so long. They gave them so little food that it really only made sense to give them like one bolus, one meal a day. Well, when they finally sat down and looked at and spreading out those same amount of calories, it nullified a lot of the benefits. So really, it's that fasting state that seems to help metabolically reset you. And I think that's what's important. And I think that's why we're seeing so much diabetes and metabolic disease in society because of this recommendation of, to not be hungry, you should be constantly eating.
Yeah.
No, that's not how people work. You need this period of fasting to sensitize your insulin receptors and your incretin hormone response. So the 6 meals a day, I unless you're, Brian Shaw and you need to, 10,000 calories, that's just horseshit. So consider intermittent fasting, or really it's more narrowing the window between when you start eating breakfast in the morning and when you have dinner, keeping that within 8 hours, because people with self-select just normal habits, that their feeding period's about 14 hours. So that's just from when they wake up to when they might have
Right.
snack. So narrowing that window is a good healthy habit for you metabolically, I would say.
I got a question on that. A lot of diets will have you eat 5 times a day, but I mean, you're not eating full meals. You're eating, breakfast to get your metabolism started. Then you eat like an apple for a snack. Then you eat really clean for lunch. Then you eat like a snack after that, which is straight raw vegetables. And then you eat dinner really clean. How does that compare to the other side where we're looking at a lot at intermittent fasting?
Well, I would say at the same time, like you're still kind of probably narrowing the window in terms of like when you're not probably having a snack like late at night,
No.
and your overall quantities probably fairly low, that you might not be actually incurring a lot of an insulin response. I think the problem with some of those is that you still people are still allow themselves to eat things that are sort of healthy but not really. So like some like wheat bread, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or let's say something that seems kind of healthy, like what do they call that? Like hummus or something. Yeah, it's good. It's got some protein, but it's mostly carbs. And does have some olive oil in it, I suppose. And if that, some people, I should say too, some people don't tolerate extended periods of fasting very well, and they're not going to do well in that. So if that works for them, that's great if that helps them control. But I would say in general, a big part of that though too is just that if it's encouraging you to eat more vegetables, that's great. And that really just might be like you just could get the same effect by getting more fiber in your diet, and then you'll feel full, and then you don't have to eat 5 times a day to not feel hungry. So I would say it's when it comes to a diet, it's not necessarily this specific regimen. It might just be conforming to certain habits you find helpful for your psychology. Something I would say too, with like the reason why most diets fail, I would say, don't really have to do with whether they work or not, because they're probably doing something with caloric deficit. It really has more to do with cultural compatibility. So just how it works in your daily regimen, how you socialize with people. So if you're on like a keto diet, for example, and then you show up to like the Super Bowl party, well, they got nachos and cheese. They got all the the casseroles, whatever they have you for that. And it's like all you can eat on a keto diet is basically like cheese and bacon
Yeah.
or something like that. And it really just, or maybe there's like cake and fruit salad. They have all these desserts in addition. It's like all you can eat maybe is like the chicken wing, but you can't eat the chicken wings because it's got a sweet glaze on them. It's this kind of stuff where just eventually it's like, okay, I'm just not going to eat. Well, you show up to that place, everyone's partying, having a good time, and you don't want to eat any of the food. It's like, well, who's this asshole? That's what happens, and you just get tired of it. You just get tired of feeling like you can't do anything, or you can't go there because maybe you'll end up eating something anyway, and then now you're breaking ketosis. So you really have to find something that's going to be culturally compatible and something that you can stick with consistently enough. So when you do show up at a party, you can actually eat the food there.
Yeah, exactly.
And you take the mulligan for that day, and then you're good for the other.
It's not a big deal. Exactly. Stick with it. Keep going. Yeah.
And that's applicable to training too. If you're training consistently and then something comes up and you got to miss a day, well, you've been so consistent. One day off isn't going to derail your training regimen. You get some of these people that are really like hyper obsessed with it, and they end up overtraining because they never miss anything, and they get wound up like if they have to miss a training. It's like, that's not how it works. There should be room for error in, or I should say, time for yourself in your diet and your training if you're being consistent.
Absolutely.
So yeah, in regards to training, have you stumbled upon any like unusual or not often spoken about training techniques that have helped you in your strength career or grip career?
Yeah, there's a more recent one. I talked with Don Cummings. He showed me, and I'd seen this exercise before. I just hadn't tried it for myself. But the exercise Bud Jeffries came up with, if you can see back here in my power rack, I actually have it set up for that exercise. It's a barbell that's loaded unevenly, and you have one end as a small weight on the barbell, that side there. And the other side has the strap tied to it. And basically you push down on one and pull on the other, and that force you have to do to torque your torso, it really trains that steel bending position of how you have to twist yourself and keep rigid. So that was an interesting one. Another one
makes a lot of sense.
He showed me while I was there is what I have it set up there too, is this elastic band hooked up to the top, and basically you loop the steel bar you want to bend and pull into it. So do a high pull. You're not pulling up like an upright row, you're pulling it into you.
Mm-hmm.
And this helped me develop the flexibility to actually do double overhand bending.
Okay.
I was always terrible at this before because I couldn't get into a position. I would always reverse bend the bar.
Yeah,
that's what I need because I can't get that flexibility to save my life.
Yeah, that's the only reason I was good at the double overs, because I was really flexible in my upper body.
Because he's Gumby.
Yeah, so I couldn't get into a position without feeling like I was about ready to separate my shoulders from my.
That's me. I can't do that.
Yeah, well, this helped me. Like it's taking the resistance band, taking it's really this is a 60 penny nail. I have a really tough one here, and but use a 7-inch bar is better because it's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I'd recommend a 7-inch one. That's what I practice on. But just pulling it here, and you're probably going to get stuck like here with it. That's fine. And then just try to the next set, inch it in, next set, inch it in. And eventually you'll start building up that range to where you can get it here. So that really helped me. Before I couldn't really do it. And that's what I've realized when it comes to flexibility. Movement's way better than just trying to do static stretches for that. You want to get in there and you need to build the strength in that range of motion to get your body comfortable with that extended range. If you're not strong enough, and that's why you have limited range, is because your body is saying, oh, this stretch response is too much. You're not strong enough in this position.
Yeah.
We're putting the brakes on here. But if you start working that, eventually you will feel more comfortable there. So it doesn't happen overnight, but keep working at it. And it might get there for you. I don't know. I mean, some people, they, maybe there's some like joint issue that they have, but your muscles have a pretty wide capacity to stretch further, which is why when you are doing, I would say, a stretching movement, you want to make sure that the stretch is across the muscle belly, not on the tendons. Your tendons don't stretch that much. It's your muscle
Right.
that can have a very large capacity. And that was what the problem was, is that I felt like it was all on my shoulder tendons. And I hated that. So I needed to be able to find a position where I could actually use my muscles. So that's a those were two techniques I recently thought about. As far as like unorthodox ones that I typically use, so something that I came up with, maybe I think it's kind of intuitive, maybe it's a little unorthodox, but when I train regular lifts, I try to keep in mind my goals for steel bending and grip. And so a lot of times with like bodybuilders doing high volume or powerlifters doing high volume, they're bouncing weights. They're doing, they're doing like incomplete reps, say like, something like this. That's
Yeah.
great for a pump. It helps, build muscle, but you're able to do that because you're storing a lot of elastic tension in your tendons and your muscles and your joints when you're doing that. Same thing kind of with even with like Olympic lifting, when they squat all the way down, well, they can recover real quick because they're bouncing that bar, and then they get in position, they get it there, and then they, fire it off. So they're utilizing that elastic tension that they build up from those powerful movements. For me, what I'm trying to do with steel bending is it's all about tension development. So if I take, say, like a press, I want to stop it, dead stop, and then go as hard as I can. I want to work that 0 to 100 as fast as possible. That's what I think about when I'm lifting. Whether that's curls, I want to go all the way down, let the slack come into my muscles, stop storing that elastic tension, and train that redevelopment of tension. So I want to go as fast as possible without momentum. Is basically the thing, fast as
Right.
you can without cheating, and it's about tension development and not so much just raw power. It's about activating that strength as fast as you can. And so I'm trying to, even in my dynamic movements, I'm thinking about how to maximally transfer that into static strength.
Awesome.
That makes sense.
So if you could start your training all over again today with what you know now, what would you do different?
Yeah, so what I kind of alluded to before is that I would definitely cut back on the volume, do sets of 5 reps instead of 3 sets of 10 or 2 sets of 15 or something like that. It kind of depends though too. I would say like if you're young and you're skinny and you still have some growth you can kind of do like to expand your rib cage. I would definitely recommend those overhead lat extensions. That helps build out your chest. Do a lot more, say like breathing squats or something. So I think that there's some foundational stuff that can really work that maybe I wouldn't do so much now if I had to start all over again. But I would say for strength training in general, sets of 5 sets of 5. Some of those mean actually warm-up sets, and just focusing on that more so. And still sticking with the big compound list, but don't feel like you have to do all these different like accessory lifts. Like I feel like leg extensions, I never got anything out of them. If you're doing squats or hack squats or something like that, that's good. That's good. Make sure you're just doing full range of motion on those. Don't spread yourself too thin. That's what I do. I wanted to do everything. Bodybuilding. I wanted to look. I wanted to do. I wanted a big squat. I wanted to do strong. Just focus on a couple of things at a time and try to meet those goals. And when you meet those goals, you move on to other things. And that's what I try to do now. It's like I would liken it to like, people that are polyglots, people that can speak a lot of different languages. Somebody can speak like 12 different languages, but there's really only like 4 that they can have in the forefront of their mind. The rest they kind of fade back as they have to use one and don't use the others. There's really only so many lifts you can actively train for and improve at the same time. And I say, a couple just because like, you don't want it to be the only thing. There needs to be some kind of stimulus from doing other stuff. But it's one of these things that I think people overemphasize, like, oh, you need to confuse your muscles. You're going to get over adaptation if you do. But it's like, well, that's true. You can get stagnant from doing the same thing over and over again. But I can tell you're not going to up your deadlifting by not deadlifting.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a few lifts that can be at the forefront, and then the rest have to fade back. So, as far as like progressing on an individual lift over, say, like 10 years, it's a seesaw kind of thing. You're going to go up, you're going to go down, but you're still keeping going up as the trajectory. Just don't get discouraged that when you come back to it, you've lost that. So most of the time, I'm pretty happy with, I revisit a lift, and without it having touched it in a long time, I'm at like 85, 90% of where I was before. So it's like, okay, still pretty good. So that's what I would say. Try not to stretch myself too thin, cut back on the volume, and keep hammering that technique, because I think that's my biggest strength though too, is my technique's very good, and that helps prevent injuries. But in the long term, that is what will help you make more consistent gains, and then you also don't lose traction from having to retrain, all that kind of stuff. I guess the only other thing I would say too is probably would have wanted to do some brace steel bending more consistently when I was younger, so I get better at that. I definitely wish I would have figured out how to bend horseshoes a lot earlier than I did. I couldn't get the hang of it for the longest time until I finally got hold of a horseshoe that was easy enough to do, and then it started to click for me. But those would be the things I think I would change.
So this next one might be tough for you since you're a home gym hero. What is the most important piece in your home gym and why?
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, the basic one, I would say, I'm trying to think. It's got the most basic thing is obviously the barbell. You can't argue with that. I would say second to that is the power rack. Now I don't always use if I had more room, I'd probably do the power rack more, just because like I really like those support kind of lifts, those lockout kind of stuff. I think that's really important for bending like tendon strength and stuff. So those are kind of obvious, boring answers, I would say. As far as let me think here. Really, like I guess the main thing is like the loading pin. You need the loading pin to be able to have these different implements, and that's not something that a regular training person is going to have. They don't have. They just lift with barbells and machines and stuff like that. So the loading pin as a base for whatever you can attach it to, I think is really important. That's what lets you do things like the one arm lifts and whatnot, like the one arm handle ones. I would say another one very underappreciated was loadable Olympic dumbbells. Most dumbbell sets that you see, you can't load that much, or they're too flimsy anyway, even if you think you could put more weight on. So a good quality set of dumbbells. And yeah, for as much, a lot of the stuff I say that I do have, it's too specialized to really recommend as the piece of equipment. So yeah, I would just say those are the main things. Just start slowly building out your gym. Start with the thing that you can get the most mileage of, which is just a basic good quality barbell. So I started off with like some cheap set that was like 140 some bucks. But as I got stronger, I realized that, these weaker barbells, like they tap out at super high weights that you might want to do partials with. Invest in a good quality barbell. The one that I use, my good one here, is like an old school York one. I think that they made like back in like the 80s or something. It was recommended as a good one from Strongman Archaeology, James Fuller. When I found that in the Craigslist ad, I knew I had to get that one. And then there's some other ones. So I got this safety squat bar for squats, just because like it was killing me. Like I do high bar squats. I don't like low bar. I want to train high bar, but it was just killing my neck to do that. So, but you can only really do squats and squat partials on that. And it's an important piece of equipment, but you can only do a couple of reels that make sense. The honestly, what I used for when I was in grad school, the main things that I had was my thick bar, my 2-inch bar, and a set of handstand handles made out of pipe fittings and stuff. And I would do body weight stuff with handstands, planches, and stuff like that. And I had only about 100 some pounds or so. So I would do things like one arm lifts or one-legged lifts. I had a sandbag that I partially filled, so that was pretty cheap. So a sandbag's a good piece of equipment if you don't have a lot of space, and hopefully you can contain the mess if it's there. So that's what I had for bare minimum equipment. I was just doing handstand stuff, had a thick barbell, and I had a sandbag that weighed about 200 some pounds. And that's what I did in my studio apartment that was very small. And I got steadily stronger doing that.
Nice.
Okay. So yeah, we're getting down to our last questions here. So I want to know, who are you watching in grip sport that's an up and coming? Like, who are you looking out for? Who are you watching? And if you have anything else to say just to the fans out there or people that are watching about starting their own home gym or just getting into grip sport in general.
Yeah, so I would say the person I probably watched the most is Clint Ziegler. He beat me in the armlifting USA contest. He was someone to look out for in 2020 King Kong, and he did pretty well this past year too. So he's definitely been doing really well. So I think that's someone that I'm kind of looking out for. I would say I know a lot of the guys already that are kind of already big. So as far as people that are up and coming, I don't know. I feel like for me, a lot of times it's like, well, I'm gonna like really pay close attention to you, so you gotta show me something. You got something really wild, and so I guess I put the other thing too is like I'm bad with names, so I probably wouldn't know. But actually, you know what? There was a couple of guys that I hadn't seen before at the Armlifting USA Championships, and there was one particular young man who was very young, and he hung pretty well. I think he was only about 18 years old.
Yeah,
he had a very bright future in front of him. If I had the list of athletes, I could tell you who he was, but his name eludes me. So
was it Yvonne Shook?
No, it was another young kid.
Oh, okay, because that guy has some crazy grip strength too at 18.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard Yvonne before, but yeah, I know it's so I could probably pull it out if I remember. But as far as so that's kind of my take on that. As far as starting your home gym, as I mentioned, I started my home gym just because like I would go to gyms that work out and they didn't have what I was looking for. Most of these gyms, like commercial gyms, they didn't even have like power racks. It's like, well, I want to squat without killing myself. You're like, come on, like. And I don't have a spotter because I don't have anyone to train with that can hang with me, let alone like finding somebody that I trust to spot me. So I just want the power rack. So if I have to drop this thing, it's not going to hurt. And these places didn't have power racks, or they would have these open power racks that weren't like caged. It's like, well, I don't want to flop my ass backwards and still
exactly.
I want it to be completely enclosed. Like it doesn't do any good. And plus, like the things slant down. So if you do have to drop the barbell's like rolling backwards. Then you can't push it up because you're training heavy. Like it's all a bunch of horseshit. And that's all I really wanted was a power rack. They didn't even have that. And like the dumbbells only go up to like 80 pounds. If you're lucky, a place goes up to 120. It's like, well, if I want to do a one arm, swing, that's too light. So it was just, I got tired of that. So started with the basic barbell weight set. There's a lot you can do with that. There's enough there with just a barbell and a basic weight set and some of these like horse rubber mats. They call them like horse mats for like horse stalls and stuff like that. You just lay down the mats for something you don't want to screw up the floor on, and the barbell can do a lot. And if you max out what you already have, just start doing one arm stuff. Like I started doing one-legged squats because I didn't have enough weight to squat. And I got pretty good at it, and my best one-legged squat is 145. So that was pretty good. Most people, I
Yeah,
guess, don't
yeah.
balance for that. That's a really good lift. You can do that with a very minimum amount of weight. And so that was 145, and you can squat super heavy with just 100 pounds if you are willing to do one-legged squats.
Yeah.
And if you want to do two-legged squats, well, you just save up and you buy another pair of 45s, and eventually, you have enough to do that. And if you don't have a power rack, then you do Steinberg squats or something. There's just ways to work around it if you're determined enough. And it doesn't mean it's not a pain in the ass. It just means like you just got to do a little bit more. So once you get that, then you probably want to get a power rack. And once you get the power rack, like I said, probably next thing is a good set of loadable dumbbells. And then you can start really getting into the specialty stuff if you want to. It's just a progress over time. And I say, think about, before you make your next purchase, just think about how many things you can do with that.
Yeah.
The first barbell, it's like, that does everything for you. Well, your next barbell, maybe you want it to be specifically a deadlifting bar, or maybe you want it to be an O-lift bar. They have differences in width and slack and stuff like that. So, you might want to think about those things. Maybe you want a trap bar. So always think about the number of things you can do with a piece of equipment at first before you start to get overly specialized. And think about things that you could reasonably make yourself. So, for instance, like, if you don't want to buy a real thick bar, you can get some pipe and just reinforce it some way. I mean, if you might not be strong enough to really tax that. I don't recommend that. The other thing I would say, if you're, this is what I was getting into before, like there's different tiers of how into it someone would be that I would recommend. So if you're talking about grip training and somebody just says, how do I get my grip stronger? I just want to have a stronger grip. I don't compete. I do a little bit of work at the Y, but my wrists are kind of weak. I would tell them, like, the best thing to do if you could do one thing and you're not going to invest a lot in grip training is thick bar training. Get yourself some fat grips. And because the thing with thick bar training is that because of the wider grip, it trains your thumb because of the way you have to orientate your hand. It taxes your fingertips because your hand's now extended and the weight wants to roll out of your hand, and it taxes your wrist because it wants to roll out of your hand, and also your hands too. And the thing too, this is good for people that aren't normally doing grip because you actually kind of have to squeeze these things. They give a little. So for a person who doesn't do grip training, but they need to get stronger in their grip, I really recommend this. For somebody who's a serious gripster, you need to buy an axle. It does not feel the same.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about grip and you want to train that, you should get the axle. This thing kind of sucks, but in the absence of anything else, this is very good. Now, some events out there are using these to lend themselves to more people having access to them because the axle bar is good.
Yeah.
But this is a good example of what I would recommend to a lay person trying to get stronger, and not what I would recommend to a hardcore gripster. But so there can be different. From there, so this is like if you could only have one thing. If you're willing to do more, I would say start looking into some kind of wide pinch block to really increase that thumb strength. People that don't train grip normally, their last two fingers and their thumbs are weak. They don't utilize them that much. They're over reliant on their first two fingers. So that wide pinch really helps make up for those deficits. Trap people fall into, I think, getting into grip is using grippers. I was watching the video you guys did with Tim Butler, and he was saying like how he got into grips and he was overtraining them and got tendonitis. Like they seemed fun at first, and most people have an experience with this gripper when they were a kid, and it was tough. And so they see the captain's the crush and they want to like, oh, I'm gonna close a 3 or something like that. But grippers really don't translate that well to other forms of grip strength. So if you're trying to just build up your grip strength in general, I think they're a beginner's trap to fall into because they're fun. They seem very tangible. It's something that other people say, oh, give me a try at that. Like, oh, I can't do it. It's like, oh, but I can. You have all sorts of fun with it. But you have to buy multiple ones to progress with that. And they don't, like I said, you have to buy like 5 of them to even get like a training range with them. They don't translate well to stuff. If you do want to get into that, I actually recommend extension spring grippers. This is an Ivanco Super Gripper. I think they make production ones of these. Another one is David Horn has his Vulcan gripper. So that's more like the extension spring grippers because of the angle on it. But the thing is that these grippers don't translate even that well to those grippers.
Exactly.
So they're so specific, they don't even translate well to themselves. And part of that is, though, too, I think anyway, is that, it's most people suck at them too when they first get them because they want to just grab like they're grabbing their hand, like they're closing their fist. But a gripper, in order, you have to get it set, and you're doing this, and you're actually like doing this with your hand. You're not even closing your damn hand. Like you're doing this. Like a monkey trying to drink from a beer stein. Like what the
hell? It's very strange.
Yeah, so it's like the grippers are just their own thing, which I think that's why they've kind of I've noticed anyway, they've kind of faded a bit from regular rotation and grip sport competition, at least in the ones that I've been doing, because you just need a bunch of them. They're not consistent with each other. They have to be in-person ones. You can't do something like King Kong with them for sure. So yeah, it's not. I should say too, in full disclosure, I'm not very good at grippers. I would say I can. The best I've done is like close like a level 3 Captain's a Crush gripper, and I've done holds with was it the silver dollar holds. I can do like 3.5 for a few seconds or something like that. So it's definitely not my specialty, but it's definitely a beginner's trap, I would say. The other is, so that as an aside, other thing as far as like if you could do 3 things. So I mentioned like the thick bar, the wide pinch. Definitely start looking at doing like some extensor work as to even out. Just basically, I mean, just take like the rubber bands you get from like broccoli or asparagus or something you should be eating anyway. And do some of these. Really though, the trick to training extensor stuff with the rubber bands is you need to grab something like this, like a lid, say, and you need to be opening up your hand to a width. Otherwise, you just keep doing this, and you get smaller and smaller, and you're like hardly doing anything. You need to actually tell yourself, like, are you meeting your goal with that? And that's what counts. And if you can't do it, just rest or, get more rubber bands or whatever. But just keep that in mind so you're not just aimlessly doing this all the time. So the other thing too is I would recommend as a really low budget item is plate curls. Your fingertips as well as your wrist. So you can do plate curls, plate wrist curls. Those are really good if you don't want to do any specialty equipment. If you do want to start getting into the specialty equipment, I definitely recommend something like a flask, some pinch trainer. Because if you didn't have a flask, you could just keep pinching like 2 25-pound plates and add like a loading pin to it. If you want to get more serious, I would say get something that's an actual pinch block. For that, it doesn't have to necessarily be a flask. That's kind of the standard. I really like tip tester style lifts. This is the mini tips tester from Barrel Strength Systems. Notice here it's a handle, but there is a bar divided through it. So you can't wrap your fingers all the way around it. That's why it's a tip tester. It's putting the tension on your fingers. That's another dimension. So you got to be careful with these types of lifts. You can damage your tendons. You ease into this. Do not max out. Do not test your limits on these when you first get these. You need to condition yourself for that. Vertical bar is the next kind of, that's in the next kind of like, I would say top 5 essential ones, some kind of loading, a handle that you could put onto the loading pin, whether that's a little bighorn, FBBC jug, the fence post, or just, the 2-inch one from FBBC. So vertical bar lifts are another big one
Yeah.
to work on too. And then from that, either like some kind of inch dumbbell trainer or a rolling handle style lifts, like a crusher or something like that. So that now that if you're talking about, so now you're like crushers, vertical bar, pinch device, in addition to a fat bar and wide pinch, those kind of ones there, plus extensive training. That's your base. For now, you're starting to get into actual grip sport specific.
Yep. Yep.
That's what if you're going to go into that space, that's what you need to start off with. I have all sorts of mini stuff. I like grip strength because they can do all sorts of stuff. I would say those 6 are what you start with before you try to go crazy and invest all your money into all that stuff.
Awesome. That was really good. Thank you. Well, before we let you go, do you have any questions for us, Couch Potato Strong, or any particular golden potato records you're going to be aiming for?
Well, the thing that I was interested in most is just seeing what I could do max deadlift on. I saw too, like some people were doing pull-ups, and so it's been a while since I did weighted pull-ups. We'll see. Actually, that's one of my blunders that I did. So I was doing one-arm pull-up training. I wanted to do a one-arm pull-up, and I was doing negatives with 2-arm pull-ups, and I ended up like pulling some muscle in my lat right here. I got there. So I stopped striving for that, and I was kind of hitting more for the vertical flag, the front flag. I said I didn't quite get that, but I got close. I need to start hitting that again. So my plan was I was going to train for that before I started doing the one-arm pull-up again. So I'm a little leery about weighted pull-ups, but the concentric motions should be good. So I think the best I've done is like an extra 110 pounds extra.
Wow.
I think I've done that for at least a couple of reps on that. So that would be something interesting too. But yeah, the feel of it sounds good. But I would just say like, it seems like, you kind of do a lot of different like old times, like regular strongman stuff, just regular thing. But you guys do like more old time lifts? Are you curious about that? Or seems like you kind of just, I saw too, like your the Bruce Lee training device. You have that in the background, that homemade. I thought that was so cool when you had that video showing that you made that. Is it Wing Chun?
Yeah, the Wing Chun.
Yeah. So stuff like that I think is really cool.
Yeah, I've been in martial arts like pretty much all my life. Adam's been in martial arts a long time too, and his kids are in martial arts, so that's always been an aspect of our training. Yeah, we grew up watching like World's Strongest Men, just like you. Watched it every Christmas, and so when we built our home gym, we wanted to do some fun stuff. So we made some Atlas stones and made a Hercules hold and made some things, and then decided if we were going to compete or actually get good at anything, it was probably going to wind up being grip. Because I'm almost 40 years old, I'll be 40 in a few years, and Adam's not young enough to really jump into a strength sport and like learn it and become awesome at it.
Exactly.
It's just not going to happen. So grip is just a place where you can play around for a long time. I mean, look at Ode Haugen. You can play around with the grip until you're old as ever and continue to kick butt. So we figured it'd be a fun one to do.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of people I think underestimate. Like they think they look back on like their athletic days and say high school, and they're in like their 30s and they think they're over the hill. Well, it has to do with like speed and power start to decline fairly sharply after your mid 20s, but strength, just regular slow strength, continues to go up into your like 40s. And if you stay active, you can maintain it well in past your 60s. Really, the only barrier is that everyone kind of hits like the irreversible the decline in like around your mid 70s or so. That's when you can't help but get old. I'm sorry to say, and that's different for different people. But think about that though. If you regularly strength train and you got to start in it before you turn 40, you can maintain a high level of strength well into your early 70s. You might not peak at, say, your mid 40s, late 40s or something, but you could maintain something very close to that if you stuck with it well into your early 70s. So something to think about, something to keep at it, I guess, and strive for.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the reason why we chose grip is because we figured we could get really strong, you know, going into our early 40s or whatever, and then maintain and continue to get stronger at grip.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah, I
Well,
would say too, another thing that I'm learning, and I guess I've learned more in the past couple of years, is I had this idea that if I couldn't train heavy, it wasn't worth doing. So if I was a little underweight, I can't train heavy now. It's not worth it. There's a lot, and I learned this from James Fuller's Strongman Archaeology. There's a lot to be gained from just doing some movements here and there that help maintain that motion. Working a position that maybe need a little more flexibility, and we're just having fun messing around with something. You don't have to go heavy to get something out of it. It doesn't necessarily need to be a main training thing, but throwing in something like weird, like Kelly snatches. You don't have to try to break the bench press world record that nobody's touched in 100 years to get value out of bench pressing. You know, so there's a lot more stuff out there. I think that I've realized, especially as you get older, that you can use not to push the limits, but just to work out some imbalances and just have fun with. Just have fun with the movement of it. Take the pressure off of, oh, I got to go heavier. Oh, I got to get another PR. Throw some stuff in there that's just kind of fun for you, just to do it while you can still do it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I think you have to keep doing the movement or you lose it. So you just have to keep doing it, even if you're not doing it heavy. Doing it helps tremendously.
And like you said, have some fun with it, because you don't want to just keep doing a bunch of things because you're in there. You want to have a little bit of fun to reward yourself there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think too, it can take the pressure off of, psychologically, some people really work themselves up, like, oh, I've got to train heavy today.
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, no, okay, you don't, not everything, you don't have to work yourself up into crisis mode just to get through your workout here.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, thanks for joining us today, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Like I said, it's always nice having talk training. Hopefully somebody gets something out of it. And yeah.
You had a lot of good stuff. So if they're listening, I'm sure they got something out of it for sure.
Yeah. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate you chatting with us for sure.
Well, yeah, we'll catch you next time.
Yep. Sounds great.
Have a good night.